Hi everyone, welcome to Learning Impact. In today's lecture, we will discuss culture in sociology. What does it mean by culture? First is that culture has been defined by different sociologists in different way. We will first discuss the definition which was given by MacIver, George Simmel, and E.B. Taylor, and then at the last we will draw a conclusion and we'll discuss the most workable definition of culture and also discuss some characteristics of culture at the end. First is the definition of culture which was given by MacIver. Before we go into the definition which he gave of culture, first we have to look into his brief biography. First is that MacIver, his full name is Robert Morrison MacIver, who was born in Scotland. And he drew a distinction between society and community, and he wrote a famous work which was Community, a Sociological Study, which was published in 1917. And this is the work in which he drew a distinction between society and community. What is the main difference between society and community? Society is a complex system of social relationship. It is a more broader term, and community is characterized by a sense of belonging and a shared identity. So we can say that there are many communities within a society. Society is a broader term while community is at micro level. So community are a part of a society. And he has also his another work is famous, that is the modern state which was published in 1926. And in this work he drew a distinction between state and society. These two terms are used in sociology frequently. There are some differences between state and society. State is the only one institution within a broader society. Like there are many institutions like political institution, economic institution. In the same way, state is one of the institution. While society is the larger group, it is the largest group in which cannot it cannot be equated to state, because state exists within a society. So we can say that the difference between community and society which was drawn in Community Sociological Study was that community is a part of society. Similarly, state is a institution of society, which was a distinction drawn in a modern state which was published in 1926. This is the brief biography of MacIver. Now we have to look into the definition which was given by MacIver of culture. First is that the definition which was given is that culture is the expression of our nature in our models of living and our thinking, intercourse in our literature, in religion, in recreation and enjoyment. Now, to understand this definition, we have to break down this definition into parts and then be able to understand it deeply. First is that culture is the expression of our nature. What does it mean? It means that every human, they have some natural tendencies. Human has a natural tendency for communication, for creativity, for belonging, and also understanding the world around us. These are something that human has a natural tendency for. We express our natural tendencies in a concrete form, in the form of culture. Like we have a natural tendency for communication, that's why we try to give rise to a language which is a part of our culture which we use for communication. Similarly, we have a natural tendency for understanding the world around us, so we make a lot of thinking, belief and ideas about the abstract things, about the non-material culture of our society. Similarly, we have natural tendency for belonging and creativity. That's why it leads to the innovations in a culture, which leads to the modification of culture. So it means that culture is the expression of our nature. We have some natural tendencies which we express in the form of culture. So culture is how we channel these inner drives into a concrete form and practices that become shared by a community or a society. Now the second part is that culture is the expression of our nature in our models of living. What does it mean in our models of living? It means that all the lifestyle of our living, it is dominated by our culture. Lifestyle is dominated by our culture. In a models of living means it refers to the ways in which a society organize their daily lives, like how they structure the families, how society prefer the workplace environment, how they structure education institution, what kind of governance they prefer, and also what kind of relationship exists in a society. These are all our models of living, our standards or our lifestyle. And also that culture is embedded in our thinking. It means it refers to all the philosophical worldviews and ideologies that we hold. It reflects cultural patterns that guide at how we interpret reality, how we make decisions, and how we relate ourselves ourselves to others. So all the ideas and beliefs that are something in about our mental component, that is about the mental component of a culture, that is something inner of a human. This is all about our culture that shape our thinking, belief, and ideas about our surrounding. And also that culture is the expression of our intercourse also. Intercourse refers to the interactions and communication, that how we communicate, what kind of language we use, the rituals and the etiquettes we observe while communicating, and also the way we express our emotions and ideas. These are our intercourse. So culture is the expression of our intercourse also. Then in our literature include all these stories, poetry, and other forms of the writings. So literature actually capture the values, struggle, joy, and fear of society, preserving them for the future generation. All the knowledge of our culture is preserved in the form of literature, which then passed down to the next generation, and in that way it is the preservation of culture. From the literature, one can understand the culture because literature is a reflection of the culture. What kind of story is popular in a society? What kind of poetry do they prefer? What forms of writing do they like? This is all according to a culture of that society. Then religion. Religion is part of our culture, and all the religious practices, belief, rituals, and symbols, they are deeply ingrained in our culture, influencing our ethics, also the law, art, and social organization. Even religion can impact our laws also, like the governance structure can also be influenced by the religion if the society is conservative. For example, in case of the Pakistani society, as it is more conservative, so the religion has impact and it has role in shaping the laws of the society. Especially we have some Sharia laws and also some of the laws related to marital rape, that is according to the Islamic teaching. So if a society is more conservative, so the religion impact will be more strong, and it will even play a role in shaping the governance and the laws of the society. Then in recreation and enjoyment are all the activities that we use to relax ourselves. The ways that people use, the people adopt to celebrate or to entertain themselves and engage in arts, sports, and festivals. These are all our recreation and enjoyment activities. So these activities are not just about relaxation, but they also convey deeper meaning about culture. Like it shape our identity, it talk about our status, it convey meaning about our community belonging, and also that what is considered beautiful, exciting, or worthy of time. Like in case of the subcontinent, the most recreation and the enjoyment activity, or we can say the sports that they prefer, that is the cricket. But if we look on the global level, the most popular sport is football. So, but in case of the subcontinent, they prefer more the cricket. It depends on a culture of the society, and it varies from society to society that how people perceive different festivals. For example, Holi is a festival that is more popular in India. In case of the Western society, they might be unaware of it. So it means that culture is the expression of our nature, all our natural tendencies, and also in our models of living, all our lifestyle, our thinking, beliefs, ideas, intercourse, what kind of communication we have, and also our literature and religion and recreation enjoyment activities. So this is the definition which was given by MacIver. Now, the second definition which we'll discuss is given by the E.B. Taylor. E.B. Taylor, as a sociologist, we first just looked into his brief biography. His full name is Sir Edward Burnett Taylor, and E.B. Taylor was the founder of the cultural anthropology. Anthropology studies the society, but is studied through the comparative lens and also talk about the origin of culture. So it traces back the historical evolution of culture also, and also studies societies in comparative lens. That's how anthropology is different from sociology. So he is considered the founder of culture anthropology. He has his famous work that is known as the primitive culture, and he was known as the earliest modern conception of culture. He gave his views on culture, which is considered one of the earliest modern concepts of culture. And he also talked about the evolution of religion. Evolution of religion, which he discussed, is considered one of the well-known theory in anthropology. And he believed that in beginning, the religion was all about the animism, in which the soul was equated to God. And then the people, they started thinking about the superpower things, and then they start worshipping different other things like fire and also the moon, and it leads to the polytheism. And then at the last, the most civilized, or the most sophisticated form of religion is then monotheism, which was also criticized for the ethnocentric view. But the evolution of culture is a theory uh, which is considered a landmark in a study of religion. Now, what was the definition which was given by E.B. Taylor? He said that culture is that complex whole which includes knowledge, belief, art, morals, law, customs, and any other capabilities and habits acquired by man as a member of the society. What does it mean? Let's break down this definition into different parts. First is that culture is that complex whole. What does it mean by complex whole? Complex whole means interconnected elements. Culture is holistic, means it covers everything from the tangible object people create to the intangible beliefs and practices that guide their livings. So it is a complex whole. It is not only about the material, the tangible things, or it's not only about the beliefs and ideas, but it's about the collection of both. And which includes knowledge. Knowledge includes all the information, skills, and understanding that pass down through a generation. And the knowledge means all the practices that we follow. We have a kind of information or perception about it. That's why we are following such practices. So knowledge refers to all these information and skills. For example, the farming skills, that how people farm in a particular society, how people heal, how they navigate social relationship, how they celebrate festivals, what kind of handicraft do they prefer. These are all the skills and the knowledge and information that pass down from generation to generation and is particular for specific culture. Then belief. Culture is that complex whole that which includes knowledge. Then the second is belief. Belief means all the ideas and convictions that people hold about the world. Beliefs about what is right or what is wrong, what is sacred or what brings good luck. These are all our beliefs, our ideas about the world. And then art. It includes all the visual arts, the music, literature, dance, or any other form of the creative expression. These are our arts. So culture is also the reflection of art. Also the morals. Morals are the principles or the standards that determine that what is good or what is bad, what is right or what is wrong, what is acceptable in this society and what is unacceptable. So it determines that how people behave and how they judge others. It might be that an action is considered more acceptable in one culture but is unacceptable in another culture, depend on the perception of people that how they perceive that action. For example, the moral values like honesty, respect, responsibilities, they are taught by the institution that become part of our morals. So it differs from society to society. In a Western society, they give more value to the individualistic values. On the other hand, in case of the conservative society, they give more importance to a collectivism values. So the morals, it depend on a society and the type of socialization and the type of the socialization people has passed through. Then law. Culture is also the reflection of law. Law are the formal system of rules. These are the documented form of rules and that govern our behavior. So laws are often, the codified version of a society moral and ethical standards. Now, what kind of laws prevail in a society, what is legal or what is illegal, depend on a culture. It may differ from one culture to another. For example, in case of the abortion, which is considered a social problem, different society have different perception of it. Like Colombia never justify abortion. On the other hand, Sweden is a country that always justify abortion. So we can say that it depends on a culture and the perception of the people that how they view that particular social problem. Keeping in mind the perception of the people, state then make laws about the different social problems. Now, the other is the customs. That culture is also the reflection of our customs. Customs are all the traditional practices and rituals. It includes the social practices like greetings, festivals, marriage ceremonies, and the ways of dressing also. Ways of dressing is quite subjective depending on the society. Western society way of dressing is quite different from the conservative society or from the Pakistani Indian society. And any other capabilities and habits that are acquired by a man as a member of the society. As we know, the culture is something which we acquire through socialization. It is not something that is innate. So of course, when we grow up within a particular culture, it helps us to acquire different habits and capabilities. It leads to our different personalities because people have been born and socialized in different society. Now, culture is not innate as it is learned, so it is acquired through social interaction. Capabilities and habits refers to all the skills, behaviors, and attitudes that people develop as they grow up within a culture. So this was the definition which was given by E.B. Taylor. Now third is a definition which was given by George Simmel. Who was George Simmel? George Simmel was a German sociologist, and he also drew a difference between dyads and triads. We have discussed this dyads and triad social group in our previous lecture, which was titled as the types of social group on the basis of size. So George Simmel was the first who draw a distinction between dyads and triad social group. He also wrote his famous essay which was known as The Metropolis and the Mental Life. This Metropolis and Mental Life was published in 1903, and this was the essay in which he talked about the urban sociology. He analyzed that how living in large cities it affects individuals and it is leading to increased rationalization and also a kind of attitude which he called a blaze attitude. And he believed that there is a kind of sense of detachment. There is more individualism in the urban society. So he talked about the urban sociology in this Metropolis and the Mental Life. And also, he was the author of the Philosophy of Money. And this Philosophy of Money was published in 1900. It explored the social effects of money on relationship and modern life. And he argued that it is the money that transforms our social relations by creating more impersonal and the calculative interactions, which is leading to alienation. Means that there is more individualism, more calculated and more purpose-oriented relationship in an urban society, and it is the money that is affecting all our aspects of interaction. Now, what is the definition which was given by George Simmel? It is the cultivation of individuals through the agency of external forms which have been objectified in the course of history. This is the culture. Now, let's break down this definition into parts. First is the cultivation of individual. What does it mean? Cultivation means the process of growth, education, and development. He believed that culture is the cultivation of individuals. Like it is the culture that helps an individual to grow, to get education, to develop their personality. It means that a culture is viewed as the way in which individuals they are shaped, they are refined, they are educated by the society they live in. And it's through the culture that people acquire knowledge, values, manners, and skills. As people, they observe different activities in their surroundings, so they learn these skills with time, and it leads to the cultivation of individuals, the growth and the development of individuals. Through the agency of external forms. What does it mean by external forms? External forms are all the tangible and intangible structures and practices that exist outside the individual that influence their development. There, remember that there are two forms of things. First are the external forms, that is all about that all that exists in our surrounding. But also there are some internal forces also, that how we think of the sense of justice, how we make sense of women's rights, how we make sense of the feminism. This is all about our perception. This is our inner factor. So in case of the external forms, that there are some tangible and intangible structures and practices also that exist outside the individual, but it influences their development, of course. So these forms include, all the external forms include language, art, religion, education, laws, traditions, social norms. These are all the mediums through which a culture is transmitted and internalized by individuals. So these are all the agency of the external forms. Now, which have been objectified in the course of history. What does it mean, objectify? It means that the external forms have become so established and solidified that it has now adopted a more concrete form. For example, religion, which at the beginning just started as a belief, but it has now established institution in the form of the religious institutions. It has been objectified, it has been taken and concrete and institutionalized form within a society. So they are no longer just subjective ideas, but also have taken a concrete or institutionalized form within a society. It has become more established and solidified over time. So religious beliefs that began as ideas, they are now objectified through ritual institutions like churches. There are also the sacred text that is particular for each religion. So these are the churches that is actually objectify and solidify the religion which once began just as a belief. In the course of history, there is a historical dimensions of culture also. It emphasized that culture is deeply rooted in history. The way education is structured today has a deep connection with our history because it has evolved over time, and that's why it is closely tied up to how the education was perceived and was shaped over time. And also, for example, if we take another example like the agriculture, how the farmers they do farming nowadays, it is greatly shaped by the agriculture revolution which occurred almost in 17th 18th century. So in the course of the history means that all the practices that we do today, these are the modified forms, these are the advanced forms, and it has a close connection with our history. That's why we can say that culture has been objectified in the course of history. So this was the definition which was given by George Simmel, that culture is the cultivation of individuals through the agency of external form which have been objectified in the course of history. Now the another definition which we consider as the most workable definition and on which different sociologists have shown consensus to, that is the culture of a group consists of shared socially learned knowledge and patterns of behavior. This is considered a more simple and acceptable definition in sociology and also in social anthropology. Now, what does it mean? The share, socially learned, and patterns of behavior. This is the definition from which we can draw the characteristics. All these characteristics which has been mentioned here, you can write down all these in a separate heading, under the separate heading that is the characteristic of culture. So for example, if I break down this definition for you, it will be like culture is share, culture is socially learned, culture is knowledge, and also that culture is patterns of behavior. These are the four parts which can be write down under the title of the characteristics of culture. Okay, these are all the characteristics. Now what does it mean that culture is shared? Culture is share means that it is not an individual phenomena, it is a collective phenomena. The people who share a culture, it might be that they are geographically dispersed, but it will always be shared by the majority, by the numerous people. It might be possibility that the people they are geographically dispersed. For example, in case of the African culture or the Western culture, it is shaped and practiced, it is shared and practiced by majority of the people, although they are geographically dispersed. But it might be that the people who practice the culture, who share the culture, they are confined to a small island. For example, in case of the Amazonian tribes, they have a unique, distinct culture which they practice and share, but they are also confined to a small geography. Means that the culture is shared, it is independent of the geography of the people who practice this culture. And second is that culture is socially learned. Now, culture is socially learned means that individuals they have acquired their culture in the process which is called socialization and enculturation. So the culture is socially learned. It means that the cultural differences and the biological differences they are largely independent of one another. People's culture it does not grow out of their gene pool or the biological makeup, but it is because of their socially constructed things, and also that how they have been socialized in a particular culture, how they acquire socialization, how they internalize different norms of the society. So culture is socially learned. Culture is never about the biological differences. And the second thing is that people don't learn culture by trial and error. Means that it is not something that people learn about edible things by trying out a variety of things that might have been edible and then rejecting things that were not edible, rather than other people taught you that what is defined and not defined as a food. So it is socially learned, like it can be learned through a socialization, and it might be that your people who are in your surrounding, they taught you that what is edible, what is not edible. So it cannot be learned because of the trial and error, and it is also independent of our biological differences. The third characteristic is that culture is knowledge. We have discussed it in a previous definition, but for now I will say that culture is knowledge. It means that culture is all about the information, skills about our practices. It is all the information that we have. it is our culture. How we practice, how we prefer to practice a particular festival, it is all about our culture. So we can say that all the people, they have a knowledge of their culture in which they are born, in which they have been socialized, and the culture knowledge generally leads to behavior that is meaningful to others and that is adaptive to the natural and the social environment. You have to perform a practice which is meaningful to a people of their society, and how will you able to do that if you have enough knowledge of that culture? So it is all about the information and skills that individual have about the particular culture. Now, the fourth characteristic is that culture is patterns of behavior. Patterns of behavior means that some individual, they brought up in the same culture, but they might differ in their behavior. The people who are born in a single culture and they have been socialized in the same culture, they might share some similar patterns of behavior. Similar patterns of behavior means that it might be that they all, for example, in case of the subcontinent, they all are mostly interested in cricket because it is the most famous sport here. So this is, and also they all know how to celebrate festivals like Eid, like Holi, because these are the patterns of behavior that they have learned over time. But it is not always like that. We have to consider that there are also the individual differences which can lead to the distinction in these patterns of behavior. And these individual differences are all about our social identities. Like individuals have different social identity, like for example male and female, of course they practice differently. Also old and young people, they practice differently in a society. Also rich and poor, their way of living is different, and also the actions that are appropriate for one identity may not be appropriate for the other. So there are some distinctions in the patterns of behavior, but there are also some resemblance also. So we have to consider individual differences also while talking about this point, because similar patterns of behavior doesn't mean that each individual will perform each and everything in a similar way. Not like this. It means that we will have some similar patterns of behavior, but at the same time, just because of our individual differences, it will also lead to the distinctions. For example, patterns of behavior also depend on the context in a situation. Like women, they act differently depending on whether she is interacting with her family or with employee. So the patterns of behavior can change. Also, just because of the unique human individual, we all are different in our emotional responses, in our appetite, our interpretation of events, and also our reaction to stimuli. So it can lead to differences in our patterns of behavior. If we all are born in the same culture and have been socialized in the same culture, it can lead to a resemblance in our patterns of behavior. Now, these are the four characteristics. Now, there are some other characteristics of culture also. Culture is variable. Culture is variable means that it changes over time. It is not something fixed. It is not something rigid. And it is variable, different from society to society. One action that is considered more acceptable in one culture might be unacceptable in another. So this is that it is variable. And also, that culture is transmissive means that it passed from generation to generation, and it is the characteristic of the culture which leads to the accumulation of knowledge, because the forefathers, our ancestors, they passed their ways of practices into our generation. So it passed from one to another, and then we, by using our rationalization, we add new layers of knowledge to that practices, and it leads to the accumulation of knowledge and the modification of culture. So it was transmissive. It passed from one generation to another. And also culture is dynamic, means that it changes, it is flexible, it is not fixed or rigid, it can change. And that's why that all the practices, like for example the marriage ceremonies, which was once practiced by our forefathers, are quite different as we are practicing it now. And also because of our dressing style, also some of the other factors like the globalization, the modernization, the urbanizations also impact our culture. So the culture is dynamic, and also the culture is adaptive, means that it depends that what kind of environment, in what kind of actions do our environment prefer. So culture is adaptive to that environment, that what kind of actions we have to perform depend on our surroundings. And also culture is accumulative, as we discussed, that every generation they add new layer of knowledge to the already culture practices, so it leads to the accumulation of culture. means we preserve our past culture in the form of literature, in the form of the stories and the form of writings, and also we add new layers as we are learning new and new things through the globalization and the automation and because of the industrialization. So it is leading to the accumulation of culture. And also that culture is linked with the past, as we discussed that our cultural practices are tightly linked with the historical practices because these all has been shaped by the historical events. For example, our agriculture practices, that how the farmers they farm, it is tightly linked with the agriculture revolution. Similarly, all our material culture, like the devices we use, the cell phone, this wasn't a part of our culture for forefathers, but it has become part of our culture because it is linked with the industrial revolution. So if we can say that all the material and the non-material culture, it is tightly linked with the events of the past. And also that culture manifests man's mind. Culture manifests man's mind means that it reflects our thinking, that how we practice different things, it reflects our thinking. It is a reflection of human thought, creativity and intellect. For example, as there are new innovations which is occurring in our society, it is a reflection of our intellect, which is part of our culture. So we can say these are the all the characteristics of culture, that culture is adaptive. Adaptive means that there are new ideas, tools and practices that are getting integrated into cultures to meet emerging needs and the challenges. So culture is variable, it is transmissive, it is dynamic, it is accumulative, it is linked with the past, it manifests man's mind. So this was all about the definition of culture and the characteristics of culture. So this was the end of our lecture. Thank you so much for watching. Leave your questions in the comment section below and like, share and subscribe our channel for latest lectures. Thank you.